Chapter 35. Reflecting upon things that had happened in the past usually gave me unique insight into the future. For example, the entire duration of my stay in Equestria, rarely did I actually have a clue what was going on and for what reason. This brought the more recent events into a disturbing light. For once, I wasn't entirely sure of what I myself was doing and why. I felt confused. The world was a more open and less controlled place. Further, my emotions were all over the place, it felt like. I stared at Rainbow for a few moments, before sighing and turning around again. She said nothing as she stood and walked up to my left side, keeping pace with me as I slowly started walking back towards Ponyville. Why had I run away to begin with? Her expression was the catalyst, but why did I choose that course of action? Still, Dash said nothing as we continued walking. She knew already, was there even a point in pretending? I'm sorry for running away. I apologized softly as we walked. The forest around us was nipping now that my armor was gone, although I still had the heavier, fluffier look from the hair regrowth incident, so I was probably warmer than she was at the moment. Sadly, I still had the braids too. As much as I disliked them, I couldn't bring myself to get rid of them. Fluttershy had put them there, which made them something special. Rainbow let out a light scoffing noise and shook her head. You ran away that night too. I told Twilight to go get you before following. I'm not stupid, however. You ran away from me specifically, she deduced, looking back over at me with a frown. I swallowed nervously before explaining. I know I did. Your expression when you look at that side of me is all. I can't stand it. My voice was weak, as I felt both better and far, far worse by having this talk with Dash. Still, I had a sneaking suspicion that there were far nastier talks coming up in the future. Yeah, okay, so you're a little creepy looking with that armor on. But I didn't know it was you, Mender. All I knew was that it was dark out, blood was everywhere, and there was this unknown creature covered in this stuff and looking monstrous. I actually feel better knowing that there isn't some terrible creature loose in the forest, she admitted, somewhat to herself rather than to me as she looked momentarily ponderous. Better? It's not armor exactly, Dash. I've been keeping a secret from you girls since I was hospitalized. You and Pinky walked in on me finally explaining it to Twilight and Fluttershy, I corrected, shuffling a little as I tried to keep my balance with the new leg brace. It made a light squeaking noise every time I bent my knee, and I wondered if Twilight had some oil I could put on the hinges. Well, you're an alien, so is it some sort of secret form or something? She asked in a rather relaxed manner. I raised an eyebrow to her and stopped walking, earning a skeptical glance before she turned around to face me again. Kind of. I'm a cyborg. I'm a clone of a Kildarian who was turned into a pony to scout Equestria and then had a bunch of mechanical parts shoved inside of me. I'm not actually a pony, I summarized, risking it considering she was taking it well so far. Maybe she was like Applejack on the fact that she appreciated honesty? She stared at me for a moment before snicking lightly and shrugging. Nah, not really a big deal. You're a pony with extra mental parts. Clone, though? I wonder if that's like the effect of the mirror pond, she questioned tentatively, tilting her as she rubbed her chin with her right forehoof. Mirror pond? I asked, raising an eyebrow to her as my left ear twitched slightly. I don't recall Twilight having mentioned anything like that before. Yeah, it's an underground pond under the Everfree with a super crystal clear reflection. Turns out it's also magical, and Pinkie Pie used it to make, dozens of herself, she explained, shuddering towards the ends as if mentally violated by the memory. Well, I knew that feeling. Wait. My eyes widened drastically, shuddering myself. No, the coincidence was just too high. Surely there were all sorts of underground ponds with crystal clear reflections and creepy supernatural manifestations, right? A moment passed. Damn it. Well, all I could do was hope for the best. The clones weren't permanent, were they? I inquired as subtly as possible. That'd be absurdly strong magic if so. The level of energy required to support that level of permanency wouldn't have been feasible back in my old dimension. Rainbow snickered, letting me breathe a sigh of relief. Nah, till I found a spell to get rid of them. She's kinda our go-to mare for remedying the supernatural. That many Pinkie Pies were scary, and did quite a bit of damage to the town. That was, what, the third time AJ's barn was destroyed? She guessed, looking rather impish this time instead. Yikes. It had as bad luck as I did. I finally continued to walk again, Rainbow falling into place next to me in a far more relaxed manner this time. It was subtle, but I felt things shift more easily between us. I doubted that she grasped the full implications of what I told her, but at least she accepted it readily enough. It actually didn't appear to matter to her one way or the other, which was both comforting and disheartening at the same time. Was I making too big of a deal out of it? I doubted it. It wasn't every day that I learned I was actually a cyborg. Rainbow's laid-back perspective was probably simply unique. Deciding to be responsible for once, I started mentally communicating while walking. Fluttershy, can you hear me? I'm okay. Damn, I was lame sometimes. I hated those awkward moments where I had no clue how to break the uncomfortable silence. Rainbow perked next to me and glanced over, hearing it in her head as well as I broadcasted it. Oh, thank goodness. Did Rainbow find you then? The yellow mare questioned back, soft voice echoing in my mind. Ooh, how do I duck back? I want to learn how to do that. Dash suddenly spoke up, sounding excited as she grinned again. I raised an eyebrow but nodded to her, halting my walking yet again. My left foreleg gave a surprising ache of protest, momentarily distracting me. I looked down at it, noticing the ankle was swelling up a little. Wonderful. Rainbow turned around and grinned at me as I looked back up, and I rapidly masked my expression. It's not that hard. Here, I offered out loud, stepping towards her. She momentarily looked unsure, but held her ground as I approached. Was she a bit nervous after all? Her expression switched to a totally new kind of nervousness as I leaned in, her eyes widening drastically. My intentions were honest, however, and I gently pushed my forehead against hers, feeling the link directly. Can you hear this? I questioned into her mind, letting her feel the specific mental reverberation I used. Her eyes widened, and she suddenly realized what I was doing. It was comforting on multiple levels to see her nervousness melt away. Yes? Fluttershy asked cautiously, accidentally eavesdropping without knowing it. Rainbow giggled in her mind, testing the techniques before smiling wider. This is so cool! That was to me, Flutters. He was teaching me how to do this. She added in her head a second later. I smirked at her before stepping around and continuing walking, this time with a slight limp. It felt like my left foreleg was getting heavy. Heat was pulling into it, and I became very aware of the heartbeat as it throbbed through. Maybe it wasn't as recovered as I had hoped. It by far wasn't a pleasant sensation, aching dully every time I moved it. Ooh! Are you guys talking with your minds? So cool! Can we all communicate like this from now on? Something blasted out through my skull from all directions, somehow both spoken and thought by Pinkie at the same time. Oddly, colors played across my vision as she spoke into my head, looking momentarily like psychedelic confetti oozing through the air. Whoa! Pinkie! Rainbow asked, half in and out of mental communication while sounding like she was reeling from the same effect. I stumbled and shook my head rapidly, trying to clear it. Yeah! Mendo must have finished the link with me. Thank you so much! That means that just Twilight, Rarity, and Applejack need to do the link thingy! Pinkie continued, the mental speech this time significantly faster than her verbal, blurring ahead and causing colored streaks to rain through the air as I dove for cover. A moment later, I groaned and shook my head. No, the streaks weren't actually there. They shimmered and faded as thoughts in the purest imaginative sense of colored balloons drifting through my mind. My eyes widened as the images flickered through, covering dozens of moments and ideas at once. Pinkie, stop! I heard Fluttershy gasp and felt her slip and fall over. Turn it off, Mender! Rainbow groaned as she stumbled next to me, tripping over my collapsed form and falling into a heap on top of me. Stop what? I can't stop yet. I totally have a ton of party things to plan. Mender's doing better and everyone's recovering so nicely. This calls for a party. The occasion is perfect for my best party yet! Pinkie added, bouncing in place with after images across the tray in front of us, prismatic effects not unlike an aurora bleeding through the ground in large pieces. This is going to take all my party-rific planning to pull off. In fact, I might have to talk to. Pinky started to continue, cracking the area around her with a web of colors before I forced every single connection off at once, trying really hard not to throw up. Reality snapped back into place instantly, the quite unnerving as my skull rang like a crate of culinary tools that fell off a bullet train going up full speed. Damn. Oh, thank you. It stopped, Rainbow murmured, shivering on top of me and rolling to the side. Her lips clutched to her temples as if she were trying to stop her head from vibrating, eyes slammed shut. Okay, we're going to have to talk to Pinky before I turn her connection back on, I nodded aloud, earning a rapid nod of approval from Dash. Yeah, let's get back and do that before she gets absorbed into party planning then. Ugh, she groaned a moment later, shakily getting to her hooves. I frowned and shifted into a sitting position, wincing as I moved my leg. Dash? I think my leg is swelling. I stood up on it for too long and it's not used to that yet, I warned, lifting it up to try to elevate it above my heart. Would it stop if I changed just the leg into my armored form? I never had tested what the effects of partial transformation were. Is that bad? Can you walk still? Rainbow asked, frowning as she walked up to me again and looked at my leg. It felt better after I elevated it, but I could hardly walk like this. I frowned and tested moving again with a little more success than before. I can kind of walk, but we'll have to take frequent breaks, I deduced, sitting it back on the ground gently. My sand friend looked less than amused by that. Ugh, that's lame. Walking back is going to take forever at this rate, she protested, looking around the forest we resided in. Neither of us had a saddlebag, so that assured the lack of the harness we used before. I considered it for a moment before chuckling. Well, if you're impatient, there is one other option, I offered hesitantly. Twilight probably wouldn't approve of this. If I ran out of focus or magic, I'd probably end up falling and making an impressive crater in the ground. To my own amusement, I wondered if that would actually kill me. Rainbow looked back at me with a skeptical glance, but I just reached out with my left forearm and touched her chest. My magic expanded across her coat and made a makeshift harness out of energy instead. She looked down at it, then peeked over her shoulder to look at the straps forming out of the barriers across her back. A smirk played across her expression as she turned back around. Don't tell Twilight? She inquired impishly. Don't tell Twilight, I agreed, smiling and nodding to her. Ah, this should be educational. Rainbow screamed, flipping us sideways as she slammed into another tight curve. Her wings expanded with rainbow light, dozens of tiny jets bursting in synchronization with every muscle movement she did. The scream shifted into laughter as she spun, me holding out for dear life on her back as my viewpoint momentarily went upside down. Ah, this was interesting indeed. Her backwards-facing jets flared again as she burst forward, coming out of the tight turn like a rocket and skimming down through the clouds, shimmering rainbow trail far wider and more sporadic than she normally made. I grinned and enjoyed the rush as we shot downwards towards the ground at high velocity. I had taken an interesting idea and plugged the wing jets directly into her own source of magic that was inside of her. Ever since Twilight had told me that every pony, even Pegasus and Earth Variants, had magic inside of them, I wanted to see if Rainbow could support the jets by herself. I guess the answer was yes. A blast of indigo hit me in the face as she flicked her wings up, letting us skim down just above the treetops and angle towards Ponyville at high speed. There were a few minor differences, I noted. Her magical color was prismatic. I really shouldn't be surprised, but it definitely gave her wings a more vibrant look than when I powered them. Further, a much more predicted outcome. They were nowhere near as powerful inside an atmosphere. I'd already realized that air friction and gravity would limit their capabilities. Still, she seemed to be enjoying them. We skidded to a stop, Rainbow shifting to a dull trot as we landed outside of Ponyville proper. She panted and coughed once as I slid off her, and I was careful to land on specifically 3 of my 4 legs. Whew! Wow! That was awesome! Remember a little flight like that wouldn't... Wow, tire me out like this, though, Rainbow muttered between pants. I snickered and shook my head. I told you that I plugged it into your own source of magic this time. You weren't just exercising your muscles, but your internal energy. I'm told it's directly linked to your vitality, so it makes sense that you'd get tired, I pointed out. Rainbow frowned and flexed her wings out again before looking back at the jets drifting across them and in the air separating from their tips. Spreading. I kind of remember hearing that from school. Wait, does that mean if I keep flying with the jets, the magical thing inside of me will get stronger too? She asked, swirling back around to look at me, eyes widening. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm trying to do with my magic. It's linked to my vitality and constitution as an earth pony, so if I exercise both my magic and body at the same time, both should benefit. The only difference is that I know how to manipulate the energy directly, whereas you require an enchantment, I explained, smirking as I knew where she was going with this. Her squeal surprised me still as she danced back and forth on her hooves, wings flapping lightly. So awesome! This'll so give me a one-up on making it into the Wonderbolts. Please, Mender, can we practice these jet thingies more often? She pleaded, shuffling a bit closer than I was comfortable with. I flushed as I stumbled and fell backwards on my rear while backing away from her advance. Sure, Dash. It's no problem. I might be able to hook you up with a permanent set later once I build up some more of my magic reserves, I suggested quietly. I prefer she get more comfortable with the jets first, though, before she tried solo flights. I could probably do the permanent enchantment now, but decided against mentioning that. If she exhausted herself in midair and passed out, no, I couldn't let my friend take that risk. Oblivious to my internal conflict, Dash nodded vigorously and hopped into the air, hovering in place as she spun in a quick circle. Totally cool! Don't let any pony ever tell you that you're not awesome! I'll also buck them in the head if they do! Dash promised, grinning at me as I felt the heat get worse in my cheeks. Her expression shifted impish and I inwardly sighed. She enjoyed my reactions too, I noted. What's with mares and liking to watch me blush? A tiny gasp interrupted both of us, and I raised my eyebrows as I peeked to the left. An extremely familiar-looking orange filly stood there, staring wide-eyed at Rainbow. Scooter wore a helmet this time and was parked on a scooter about 3 or 4 meters away. Sweetie Belle and Applebloom bailed off the back of the scooter at the same instant, the white unicorn filly making a mad dash in my direction with no hesitation whatsoever. I smiled at her and moved my injured leg out of the way before she plowed into my chest, giving me a rather sizable hug. Bender! Get out of the hospital! I really, really missed you, she squealed, looking up at me with huge eyes while wrapping her front legs around my right foreleg. Applebloom approached slightly slower, snicking at Sweetie before sitting down next to me. I missed you too. We didn't get a single chance to visit you in the hospital between stupid Skull and Applejack being all fussy, she protested, flattening her ears back for a moment and looking annoyed. You really think he's awesome, Rainbow? Dash? Scooter asked rapidly, approaching Dash instead. I gave a skeptical look, but decided I probably didn't want to know. I missed you girls too. I'd heard your sister was taking what happened rather roughly, I returned, frowning a little as I gently patted Applebloom on the head. She shook her head rapidly, looking more flustered than mad. She's overworking herself again. She's in the market today trying to sell apples, actually, Applebloom informed, looking over at Sweetie Belle instead, who was trying her very hardest to assimilate with me. Heck yeah! Mender's totally awesome. He and I totally kick flank while working together, Dash bragged, causing Scooter's eyes to light up. I groaned and warned, you shouldn't go bragging about me like that. That's how rumors get started, remember? The last thing I needed was for rumors to start up about me and the little filly. Dash rolled her eyes, adding, and he's modest, too. You really need to admit how cool you are sometimes, Mender. I gave her a skeptical stare, but shifted my attention to the movement rapidly rounding the corner. Are you sure Rainbow landed over here? Twilight asked as she followed after the speeding pink bloodhound who was apparently on my trail. Oops. Pinky zoomed right at me, looking up in time to get a happy expression as she started hopping and said, The twitches never fail me! They're right over here! She announced happily. I braced for another impact, but noticed her bounces weren't nearly as high or fast as usual. Further, she slowed this time before reaching me and slid to stop, giving me a soft hug instead. I smiled, happy with her gentleness today. Mender, I'm so happy you're okay, Fluttershy whispered, drifting in and gently landing next to me, careful not to land on either filly. She then hugged my other side, squishing Applebloom up against my left foreleg as well. I blinked, starting to heat up for totally normal reasons, as for a pony squished into me now. I'm glad I was trimmed down to only a fluffy coat instead of a 2-meter wide furball like before. I'd probably melt. Ooh! Group hug! Pinky chirped, hugging into my side again. Sweetie Belle was locked on Fluttershy instead, however. You two are so cute together, the white filly squealed, looking delighted and nodding up at me. Twilight approached next, however, and smiled at me as well. Got room for a fifth? She asked, slipping in between Pinky and Fluttershy before I could fully answer. Of course, Twy, I agreed, blushing lightly as she shifted and gave me a light peck on the mouth. Sudibel gasped and then squeaked somewhere below her, not that I could physically see the white filly anymore. I chuckled and then apologized with, "Sorry for running away back there. I know why you ran. It's understandable after what you told us earlier. No pony's mad at you." Twilight interrupted almost instantly, apparently having anticipated my attempt at apologizing. I coughed slightly and covered my mouth as I laughed. She knew me a little bit, I supposed. Part of me was glad that Pinky wasn't asking any awkward questions in front of the fillies, of course. Although I realized she was excitable and curious, I also noted that she seemed to have proper discretion when she wanted to. Regardless, I decided a change of pace was probably in order. Do you think we could go to the market, by the way? Applebloom mentioned that Applejack was working the stand-in. I'd like to try to talk to her. I asked gently, looking back up at Twilight upon giving up trying to find Sudibel amidst all the colorful fur. Ooh, yeah, that's a real good idea. Mrs. talks to Mender, she realized that half the stuff she's been worrying about is total hogwash. I thought I'd fix her up a bit. Applebloom agreed, standing up again and giving me a merry grin. Twilight and Fluttershy looked at each other before the timid Pegasus gave a nod, adding, "It would probably be a good idea. She's been really stressed the last few days." I had heard as much from Rainbow Dash herself, of course. She'll probably try to run away again. You might have to grab her with magic, Twy. Dash spoke up, cutting in between hers and Pinky as Twilight stepped back. I don't really want to restrain her. She's just going through a bad spot and scared, Twilight muttered. I bit back on my tongue and looked away from the mirror. Sure, she didn't want to restrain Applejack, but using her magic to grab at or lock up aliens was totally fine. Keel and I were easy targets to justify, I suppose. Although Applejack being able to buck a hole through me was fairly dangerous too. Pinky rapidly shook her head. Using magic to hold any pony is wrong unless it's absolutely needed. I'll talk to her if she tries to run. Pinky refuted, adding a hoof stomp as punctuation. I smiled at her, earning a beaming grin in return. Now there was a sensible opinion. It scared me that it came from Pinky, but I had always seen maturity under the bubbly mare's exterior. Alright, I wanted to talk with her anyway, so this is as good a time as any. Is every pony coming? Twilight asked, stepping back a little more and rotating the face to market area. Heck yeah! Rainbow agreed, taking to the air. I snickered until I felt a sudden weight impact my back. Raising an eyebrow, I looked back and found to see Sudibel grinning at me from her now riding position. Fluttershy gasped next to me, raising a hoof to her mouth, writing, Sweetie, he's injured. You shouldn't add more weight. He has to walk on. I shook my head and quieted her with a peck to the cheek. It's okay. It's not too far, and sitting down for a bit has let me rest my leg. Thank you very much for worrying about me, though, Fluttershy. I thanked politely, giving the now flustered mare a soft smile. Twilight smiled as well at the display before turning and heading towards the market. Slowly and steadily, I started walking towards the market as well, careful to keep the most of the weight off my leg. Sudibel wasn't really that heavy, and I barely felt the noticeable difference, honestly. Pinky burst ahead, following after Rainbow, who had gone ahead of Twilight. Fluttershy fell in next to me on the left, keeping suspiciously close to me while glancing down at my injured leg every few seconds. I smiled inwardly to myself. She really was worried that I'd fall, I guessed. Applebloom and Scootaloo hung to my right and trotted along at a matching pace, breaking in to talk about some break from school in a week. Oddly, I wondered if there was a holiday coming up or something. I made a mental note to ask Twilight tonight. A holiday might be a fun way to forget everything for a while. The markets were rather busy this time of day, I rapidly discovered. Ponies were hustling about with crisp conversation here and there. The day seemed a little darker with the light tint from the barrier over the entire town, and it meshed with the nip in the air to give the definite feel of winter approaching. School had started back up for the colts and fillies too. They must have summers off, I noted. Kildanish broke the schooling up into trimesters with short 2-week breaks between, then mandatory combat training in the off-season. It was interesting having all sorts of memories that weren't mine. I remembered that I couldn't remember a time when there wasn't combat training, even though I knew it had existed a few centuries prior to my birth. We'd fought the Grosher song that we forgot who we used to be. My thoughts drifted as I watched Twilight approach the apple stand. Interestingly enough, Rarity was already there and appeared to be talking to Applejack when we walked up. My breath caught as I realized it was the first time I'd seen the orange mare since that night. Still, she looked far from dangerous at this point, which allowed my heart to slow down a little again. Stupid nerves. I knew she wasn't going to hurt me. I just wish I could help and tell my body that. Applejack looked like a mess. Her eyes were totally bloodshot with irritated puffs under them. Her mane didn't look combed in the least, and she apparently forgot her hair tail today, letting it limply drape across the ground instead. Her trademark hat was even on crooked as she appeared to give Rarity an annoyed glare. Uh-oh. Applejack, I'm only trying to help you. You absolutely must take a rest and recover before you end up in the hospital too, Rarity continued, apparently from the conversation that had been going on before our arrival. As we got closer, I also noticed several nicks and cuts dotting the farmer's coat, only a few bandaged and a wrap over her right shoulder. How much of that was from the explosion? The stubborn farmer gave a huff and shook her head rapidly. I'm just fine. Look, I know you're worried about me and all, and I really appreciate that, but it's not needed. This is no more than what's usually done by me in the week before the second cycle. And it's good for me to keep my mind off things, she protested, whacking the stand towards the end to prove her point. The precariously balanced apple baskets wobbled a little bit, and I guessed outright that they wouldn't survive the conversation to come. She's right, Applejack. You're obviously exhausted. Remember the last time you refused to accept help? Twilight warned, moving in next to Rarity upon approaching the stand. I idled closer, shifting off to the left as I watched. At some point while walking, all three fields had ended up on my back. I really needed to work on that awareness thing. Apparently I had this nasty tendency to drift off with my own thoughts and not pay attention to my surroundings. Given my luck and gravitational pull, that was probably one of my more stupid tendencies. Rainbow and Pinky soon joined Twilight's intervention while Fluttershy hung back with me, ever alert in case I tipped. At this point, however, I noticed her suddenly brushing against me while walking as well. Did you have two sets of ulterior motives for hanging back? I smirked at the clever mirror, causing her to blush and look away rapidly. She knew I'd noticed now. My leg gave a light throb, however, distracting me from my mirthful entertainment. I know. It won't happen this time. Look, I just have things to think about is all. Sleep's been a little, lacking. Applejack finally admitted, plopping back down behind our stand and staring at its wooden surface. I frowned as I watched her expression fall again, a haunted look momentarily flickering through her eyes. That I'd seen before. Well, the other me had seen it before, rather. Rainbow had that feel to her, too, for a bit after what happened on the grass ship. Regret and violence both had a way of decaying away at the inside of you, leaving behind a hollow, cold sensation over time. I couldn't do it justice, even when I considered it directly. War was hell. I'd imagine most opponents were totally unaccustomed to that level of violence, and she also probably felt at least part of it was her fault. Fluttershy frowned in my peripheral vision as I started walking closer, flanking to stand and to the left. Applejack, you really need to go and talk to him. Things aren't as bad as you think, Pinky pleaded, expression surprisingly solemn for her. Applejack frowned and shut her dirty look before sighing and shaking her head. I probably should, but he must hate me by now. He must. After everything I did to him, there's just no way to consider it. I almost killed him. Where's the honesty in that? He was telling the truth all along, and Her voice trailed off as she shivered there, rapidly shaking her head and turning around. My frown deepened, and then I winced as she accidentally ran her face into the apple cart behind her. She let out a sharp yelp as apples spilled all over the place, rapidly backing away from the offending inanimate object. Some of those wounds did look more recent. I started to guess as to how. In her haste of backing up, her rear cracked into the stand instead. The basket spilled instantly, apples rolling off the surface and into the dirt by the dozens. Dang it! Applejack growled, glaring in frustration at the fallen fruit. I nodded back to my fellow Cutie Mark Crusaders, who returned the gesture before piling off my back. All three sprinted ahead of me and started helping Applejack to gather up the apples, while I righted the baskets for them to put them in. Thanks, y'all. I just haven't been feeling too good, she muttered, smiling at Applebloom as she shot past, chasing down a rogue apple. She didn't even look up to see me, however. Rarity did see me, her eyes widening momentarily before shooting over towards Twilight, who gave her a smirk and nod. Tricky mares. It felt weird to be actually in on the plan this time, though. Pinky and Dash split apart in almost choreographed precision, each slowing the expanding apple disaster as if herding cattle. Fluttershy sat down next to me and started holding the basket steady as I created a funnel with my bears for the fizz to dump the apples in, a split leading to all 4 baskets in question. Applejack actually smiled blankly over at us before turning and looking back to Twilight. Was she nearsighted or something while tired? Look, Applejack, he accepted your apples. He knows you sent them too and thought they were delicious. The plan to figure out if he forgave you worked perfectly and you have your answer. Twilight reminded, doing that adorable air quote motion with her hooves again as she sat there. I mentally snickered, wishing I could rush over and pounce her again. That would disrupt the plan, however. I don't believe he was ever upset with you in the first place anyway. Why, he's not even upset with me, and I kissed him! Red exclaimed, gasping afterwards and looking horrified. Applejack gave her a deadpan stare for a moment before shaking her head and closing her eyes again. I want to make it up to him, but how do you even start with something like this? Even if he is willing to try it? She asked, lightly swallowing while keeping her eyes closed. Just talk to him. It's super easy, and I'm sure you could get him all cute and blushing and figure out a way to make him happy. It's easy. You could cook for him or give him a massage or do all his chores or... Pinky started to rant, causing me to wince. It was really rather easy to get a blush out of, I realized. It was just so, well, hard. The more I thought about it, how silly I probably looked or acted to others, the more I got embarrassed. Out of frustration, I fought back a blush just from thinking about it. Dang it! I think she gets it, Pinky. She's right, of course. You'll never work out anything if you don't talk to him. Twilight interrupted, causing the unfazed Pinky to nod rapidly in agreement, smiling again. Slowly, the baskets filled back up and Applebloom started loading the rest of them back into the cart instead. I nodded to her, getting a grin back before I lifted all 4 baskets back into the air, sliding them along my barrier and onto the stand. Thank you, Applejack muttered, still not looking at me as she lay her chin down on the wooden surface, hat shielding her eyes from the light. I'm just scared he won't want to be friends again. I told him that night that we couldn't be anymore after all. I was so stupid, she muttered a moment later, whacking her head into the wood intentionally this time. My barrier steadied the baskets, but I frowned. She wanted to be my friend again? Admittedly, that cleared up a lot of my worries. I was happy she hadn't meant what she said that night, but the words freshened my heart as the chillness crept back. Of course, I needed to tell them all the truth, or I couldn't expect them to truly be friends with me. All they knew was the mask, after all. Fluttershy and Twilight at least appeared to accept that I wasn't a psychotic murder machine anyway. Still, I couldn't let this continue any longer. You were protecting your friend, Applejack. As long as you didn't mean what you said now that you know the truth, that's enough, I explained finally, bracing for the reaction. It was hard not to be mildly disappointed when she just snorted. It doesn't change what I did to him. Even if he accepts that I was just worried for who I thought was Twi, that doesn't change the fact that it was brutally cruel. Plus, it almost killed him, she murmured, apparently having slipped into her own dark world. Applebloom hopped up on the stand and pulled Applejack's hat down, ruffling it over the mare's head. It does too matter. He forgives you, sis. He just said so. Now talk to him, she demanded, sounding surprised and stern, but in a rather cute way. Applejack straightened her hat, then shot her listless in her ignored glare, before shifting it to a questioning one. She's right, Applejack. I do forgive you. I was never mad at you. Just sad over everything that happened. Will you talk to me again? I asked, earning the orange mare's attention finally. She froze, eyes widening to their full extent as she stared at me. Momentarily, based off her expression, I wondered if I'd accidentally changed into my bioform or something. But what? You're not in the... But... She started stammering a moment later, a telltale shiver starting to go up her upper body. She appeared rooted to the spot. I blinked and tilted my head towards her. It all snapped to a head as she let out a piercing shriek instead and turned, falling into a bolting sprint from dead stop. I'd have been impressed had I not been busy slamming my eyes shut at the dirt flung up from her hooves. Dash had already swooped down by the time I opened my eyes an instant later, barely missing as the country mare dove sideways and made a break for the other side of the stand. The sandbaggers recovered fast and was hot and tail when Pinky ran around the other end to cut her off. Wait, Applejack, just talk to him! She shouted. Applejack slid, trying to move around Pinky but diving to the side. She uncleared the stand, however, and crashed into it with her shoulder. Our carefully stacked apples ate just dust yet again, her flailing hoofs launching several across the market at high velocity. Lily, who I recognized on the other side of the market, barely dodged an apple projectile as it hurtled past her position, splattering into the side of the house. Ah! The horror! Applejack! Run, every pony! She screamed out before flailing and fleeing from the market. To my surprise, instead of questioning the sanity of such a statement, dozens of ponies started screaming as well, rapidly diminishing our attractive crowd as they flew in all directions. Well, that was silly. Applejack winced as she stumbled, then reared as Pinky tried to intersect her. Rainbow landed on her back a moment later and tried to pin the strong Earth pony down. It was a losing battle, however, as Applejack, despite her state of exhaustion, attempted to jump over Pinky. She might have made it had she been rested and not carrying an additional mare. My eyes widened as both of them crashed down onto Pinky in a large heap of multicolored fur. I heard Pinky give out a sharp yelp from under the pile as Applejack rolled off her as fast as she could. I ran over, as the twat Fluttershy Rarity and the 3 CMC. The orange mare froze, looking up at me, but then swallowing and looking down at Pinky lying on the ground. I smiled when Applejack sat down instead, concerned expression towards Pinky. Pinky, are you okay? Your ribs, Twat muttered, rushing up. I'd never seen the happy mare in pain before, but she held her eyes shut hard as she allowed a silent but sharp gasp, breathing jerking in her chest. Yeah, I'll be okay. Owie, give me a second, she murmured, tucking her legs up against her as she lay there. Applejack looked even worse now. I'm sorry, Pinky. Please, just rest, she apologized rapidly. Rainbow glared at her instead, however. She wouldn't have gotten hurt if we didn't have to try to chase you down, AJ. You're better than this. Just talk to him instead of running away all the time, she lectured, looking surprisingly angry. They're all good friends, and Pinky was injured because of a fight. I could see why they'd be upset, regardless of how different it would have been handled in my dimension. Shaking out of it, I pushed past Rainbow and went up to Pinky instead. Speaking of different, there was another chance to improve things right in front of me. To limit the attention drawn, I lowered my head directly to Pinky's side, almost pressing into the shaky, breathing skin at her rib level. She gave a pained, questioning expression look until my eyes momentarily lit up her side with a blue light. What was that? Applejack asked, but the light was gone an instant later. My scan complete, I rapidly looked it over. Twilight, she needs healing magic. There are a few ruptured blood vessels to the left of the third rib down that need healing, or she's going to have some really bad bruising. Other than that, her ribs are still okay, but her chest muscles are going crazy, I relayed. So I perked before immediately leaning down as well and counting out the ribs before pressing Horn in with a burst of healing magic. Pinky winced, then gasped as the light washed over her, probably feeling better already. Her muscles were spasming due to pain, I guessed. The pink mare shivered as I finally lifted her head again, the warm light fading. I felt the repair. Thank you, Mender. Can you do something about the pain? She asked shakily. Fluttershy landed on the other side of Twat and dug into her saddlebag instantly. Here, Pinky. These are some of the numbing herbs I was going to give to Mender. I can always pick some more, she revealed, pulling out several green leaves before lowering them to Pinky's now open mouth. Shooting forwards again, I let both forelegs up and lightly pressed them into Pinky's side. Reaching out with my magic, I gently massaged her shivering muscles and smoothed out the bruising area. Pinky cooed and practically melted into the ground as I continued massaging. She better remember to chew and swallow the leaves Fluttershy gave her. Applejack had walked onto Pinky's face at this point and sat down again. I'm really sorry, Pinky. I didn't mean to do this, obviously. Can you forgive me? She said softly, looking down at her friend. Pinky lay motionless for a few moments, the light smile starting to form at her mouth again as I continued gently massaging her side. Sweetie Belle slid into my left side and watched what I was doing with avid fascination, as did a few ponies in the crowd. Appleman ran and hugged her sister's side, looking up at her for support, while Scoo helped Rainbow Dash dust herself off from her roll in the dirt. Pinky finally opened her eyes and looked up at Applejack with a surprisingly melancholy expression. No, Applejack, I can't be happy until all my friends are getting along again. Please, just talk to Mender, she asked softly, eyes shifting to pleading instead. Pinky really did have a heart of gold under that bubbly exterior. Even when in pain, she put her friends first and foremost in her mind. I massaged her more intently to try to help her, even forgiving her for the mind rape she injected us all with earlier. Applejack swallowed uneasily, but Rarity drove the point home before she could say anything else with, "Relax, Applejack. We're all mature adults here, and you have more than enough proof that he doesn't hate you, so please, for the sake of all of our efforts to show you otherwise, stop running away and simply talk to him." It felt a little harsh to me, but it was true. I didn't hate her. The orange mare's eyes softened, and she looked up fully at me again. They were absolutely bloodshot, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days now that I saw her up close. She also looked miserable. Why would she feel all of this and do this to herself over me? It was a totally foreign concept to me. "Mender, I don't even know where to start," she finally muttered, looking lost as her focus waned. She almost stared through me for a moment. I shook my head rapidly. "Please, start with what you said that night." "Please, that wasn't true, right? You still want to be my friend?" I asked instead. That was first and foremost on my mind every time I thought about the orange mare recently. All I could see was her hateful face glaring down at me and stating our friendship was over. It was the same face looking at me now, which made me uneasy, but the expression was practically the mirror opposite. Her eyes widened in surprise at the same moment her ears flicked back. She frowned a heartbeat later. Of course. I was totally wrong about the whole situation. Well, I should have believed you from the start. Or just given you the benefit of the doubt. Everything that happened to you that night could have been prevented had I just... She groaned, cutting herself off and smashing into the dirt in front of her in frustration. Pinky smiled softly and rolled finally, gently giving me a pleased squeeze with her neck and right shoulder before moving into a laying position. "I'm happy, Applejack. You're doing the right thing. You don't have to be embarrassed, though," she reasoned. I smiled, realizing she was probably right on some level. It was a strong form of embarrassment called shame. "Relax, Applejack. What I just asked you was the only part that bothered me. The more I thought about it, the more I was happy that you were so fiercely loyal to Twilight. You're a wonderful friend to her. Of course, you'd picked her over me, and I don't blame you for that. It's not your fault you were tricked by Nira too," I explained, trying to assure her. Well, yet again, I was reminded of how much I sucked at the whole social thing. Instead of looking assured, she looked more horrified than anything. But that means you don't think I'm friends with you instead. You're the one that I hurt with all of this, Mender. I want to be a good friend to you too, she protested, edging a little closer to me. I raised an eyebrow to her, but rapidly shook my head. "Applejack, I've only been here for like a month. You've known the others for years. I want to be friends with all of you, but I was the one who got off to a rocky start. I mean, even I thought I was crazy some of the time," I murmured, flushing slightly at that admission. Part of me wondered at our crowd, too. I intentionally was leaving things vague due to all of our onlookers. This town sure had a lot of nosy ponies. I barely looked up in time to see Applejack smush herself directly into my chest, almost bowling over Twilight to get over to me. My eyes widened and then bullshit she practically crushed my torso with her strong forelegs. Holy hell, how strong was this mare? She lifted her head and finally lessened the pressure, letting me gasp for air as she snickered. "Thank you, Mender. I really want to be your friend too still. I know you said that I'm forgiven, but I ain't gonna let myself off the hook that easily. So tell me come up with ways to make this up to you, okay?" she requested, giving me a look that felt as if she were staring into my soul through my eyes. I swallowed and then suddenly remembered what Celestia said. The hardest pony to forgive is yourself. She recommended that to fix it, I tried to help them forgive themselves and feel better, if I recalled correctly. Taking the advice to heart, I smiled at Applejack and nodded lightly, internally beaming as she exhaled in relief. Then applause burst out from the crowd around us. Applejack actually blushed as she rapidly released me, looking round at the crowd gathered. Well, the ones that didn't flee in terror a bit ago anyway. "Right on, Applejack. A totally righteous performance. Yeah, quite a lot of ponies worried for you, you know?" suddenly sounded from the crowd. I recognized the voice instantly and smiled as Vinyl Scratch shifted out of the mass of mostly unrecognized ponies and walked towards us. "Eh? Vinyl?" Applejack started, looking more surprised before Vinyl cut her off, hoof raising towards the farm mare. "Hi, Applejack. I'm pleased to see that you're talking to Mender again, she spoke up, lowering her purple and black shades to peek over them at Applejack. I'd figured they'd met before, but she looked surprised to see her for some reason. Had they really never been introduced? Ponyville was a small town, but it wasn't that small, I supposed. Well, it ain't evening yet. Why are you... Applejack started again, only to be cut off a second time. Evening? Vanna held up a hoof and gestured behind her to the small swarm of panicking ponies Lily was leading, screaming something about invading apples. As if any pony could sleep through that. Besides, I'm a friend of Mander's and was going to visit him in the hospital today, but I'm equally delighted to see he made it out in one piece, she exclaimed, shifting her attention back to me. She had me over and frowning at my leg before shaking her head. Sorry I couldn't visit sooner. You totally beat me back to Ponyville by at least 3 days. Then imagine my surprise when I got back to a state of emergency. Not only that, but then I found out my newest friend, the wicked lifesaver up at the party, cannot kick so much monster flank in the air that he got himself hospitalized, she cooed, sounding more and more amused as her summary went on. Gasps and murmurs exploded amidst the crowd, of course. Well, the ones not panicking. Oh, hell, not again. My ears flattened back instantly and I whined, Vinyl! All I did was stop the chandelier. Plus it was her Princess Luna who stopped the monster in the forest. Maybe I could seed off some of these ridiculous rumors this time before they spiraled out of control again. Vinyl just laughed, however, smirking at me. Modest as always. You're just so awesome, dude. You saved the entire royal orchestra and then tried to shrug it off. Then survived certain death and hold off a terrible monster until the Princess of the Moon, who you know personally, got there to stop it. Dang! She cooed, only making it far, far worse. I glared at her, suddenly realizing she was doing it on purpose. Even the 3 CMC were staring at me in shock. Twilight, however, slapped her forehead. Okay, that's it. Everybody back to the library. The apple stand is closed for now, as is my library. Back to your own business, every pony, she called out, glaring at the crowd until they rapidly started to disperse. Oh, I guess I'll see you later then? Vine asked skeptically, giving Twilight a wide berth. Twilight stopped and looked back at her with a somewhat irritated expression. I'm sorry, Vinyl. You can visit Mender in a little bit if you want, but we have some important things we need to discuss first. She apologized, nodding her head towards the tree looming over the rest of the buildings in town. Vinyl nodded and gave the universal backing off sign with her hooves towards Twilight. Applejack helped Pinky up and gently supported her on the side as she limped along, probably still a bit tender in spots. I trailed along after, Fluttershy shifting to my left and resuming her guardianship over my injured left foreleg. I didn't say anything at all when the 3 Fizz hopped quietly up onto my back again. After everything that happened, I felt they deserved an explanation too. Besides, I was actually beginning to feel like a CMC member at this point. One of my other belongings, after all, was a CMC cape, which was carefully tucked away in the saddlebags I now wore. I was just glad Twilight had enough mind to bring them with her from the hospital room after telling Nurse Reddit about my impromptu checking out. I made a mental note to return to the hospital after this and talk to the doctor. Twilight didn't think they'd want me to stay any longer, however. Of course, it also turned out that I'd torn a window frame and part of the wall down when I'd fled, so they're probably a little mad at me anyway. Rarity followed along after as well, falling carefully into place on my right side instead. She gave me an uneasy smile, to which I countered with a real one and surprised her. Even though her outburst had been rather silly in the light of things, I realized that it probably really did bother her. The more I got to know her, the more I realized the depth of everything she didn't say. She was almost as stubborn as Applejack when it came to putting others first. Dash, however, shot me a pleased grin as she hovered in place above me momentarily before dancing forwards towards the library. By the time we cleared the market, she was already at the door and opened it for all of us. Twilight flipped the sign on the door to close as she walked inside. Hey, I'd get to see Spike again too! Finally, feeling a little bit more relaxed about the situation, I followed every pony inside. There'd be a hell of a lot of questions coming up, I had a feeling, but maybe, just maybe, it would all turn out okay. My final thought before resigning myself to my fate and entering the library was of how much I sucked at keeping secrets from these mares.